Dear God, in this moment I reach for the light. When the path seems uncertain and hope feels out of sight, guide me through the darkness, let your love be my guide. In the depths of my struggles, I know you're by my side. When the world fades away, I find myself wandering through memories, tracing the lines of who I used to be. In the quiet night, when the world fades away, I find myself wandering through memories, tracing the lines of who I used to be. A tapestry woven with dreams and scars, each thread a story, each color a part of the journey that shaped me, the battles I fought. In the mirror I see a reflection, a mosaic of moments, a collection of lessons. From laughter to tears, from joy to despair, every heartbeat whispers, you're still standing there. Who I am is a melody, a rhythm of my soul, a symphony of hopes, a tale yet to be told. I'm the echoes.
I probably would be more relaxed.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to the Live Dream Survivor Show, where I talk about different topics of domestic violence abuse. I'm your host, Latasho Harris, and I am survivor of domestic violence abuse. I'm here to share my story, help someone that may be experiencing domestic violence abuse and want to know steps of getting out of the situation, and educating everyone that wants to know more about domestic violence abuse. Here today, I have on my show with me is Mallory Washington. And hi, Mallory.
Hi. Good
And
evening.
we're going to continue on talking about the topic of how does exposure to domestic violence abuse affect children. She's going to talk a little bit more about the trauma, children being traumatized by abuse, and her experience as working in this field with children being exposed to domestic violence abuse.
Okay. So, just to give you a little background about myself, I have a bachelor's in child development from Northern Illinois University, and I have a master's degree in early childhood leadership and advocacy from National Louis University. I have my background is mostly with early intervention. So I've always worked with children from the birth to five population, more so helping them in their development. And also I currently work I currently work with Child Protection Services. So I am still with young children, but most of my background has dealt with children in trauma and children that are experiencing developmental delays or children that are experiencing some type of emotional abuse. That all has to tie in with affecting their development. It all ties in together. So yeah, as a children's advocate and early childhood specialist, yeah, I'm happy to be here today. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And so far, Mallory, I have talked about the short-term effects of children being exposed to domestic violence abuse, and I also talked about the long term. I showed a short film where children were exposed to the abuse and how, if I'm not mistaken, the mother had died because she killed herself from the father abusing her. And so eventually the children got taken out of the home. And so the daughter is the one, because they really didn't speak much more about the son, but the daughter was the one that had more of the long term
as she
trauma
older.
as she got older. Yeah. And so she dealt with traumatizing, being abused, because they went to live with the grandparents. And so them going to live with the grandparents, I paid attention and noticed that the mother was already, it was a cycle, a repeated cycle. The mother was being abused, had to be abused by the father because he was abusing the daughter.
Okay. So yeah, even though location change, right? With the daughter being outside of the home and being at the grandmother's house, right? Is that what happened after the effects is still there.
Yeah.
That's normally what we see. The effects, the trauma of what the child experienced, it's still there, even though you change locations. Sometimes it's for the better to put the child in a better environment. And I assume the dad is not deceased.
No, I don't know what happened with the dad. He left after abusing the mother.
Okay. So in this case, for the kids, because they went to a different environment, or because the child, the daughter we're speaking of, went to a different environment, that may have helped the atmosphere, the environment, right? We were pulling her away. She's away from the abuser. Mm-hmm. However, the trauma is still there, right? The child, or I don't know how old she was, if she was 18 or older, but the trauma is still there, right?
They were like, kids. I would say they were the age of middle school age.
Okay. Yes. So childhood, school age children, where they're still going to school, right? They still dependent on, a parent for primary care.
Yeah.
That's hard. So when we're talking about school agers, there are a lot of things that's happening during that age, right? Kids start school at 5. So between the school age years, 5 years through, let's say 12, right before they go to high school. So, right, that's kindergarten through 8th. Well, there's a lot of things that's happening, right? Children are trying to develop autonomy. They are trying to get into their role, so their identity confusion, role confusion. They're trying to figure out who they are, right? They're trying to develop social relationships with their peers. There's a lot happening during that school age time. Now, with someone that's being abused, what we may see, or someone that has experienced or witnessed abuse, what we may see with that child is that they may start to show a decline or interest in activities that they once enjoyed. Mm-hmm. They may also start failing in school, right? Their grades might start to decline. Those are some of the things we may see. They may have difficulty sleeping at night. Mm-hmm. They also may become very aggressive. You may see them being coined the behavior child at school, right? Always getting sent to the office, or always having to deal with detention because they've experienced these things at home. So that's what we see during the school ages. Children a little bit younger than that, they may show different signs. Mm-hmm. We may see bedwetting. For children that's like 4 or 5 that may have overcame that or progress past that, they may regress and start bedwetting. They may not eat, or they may show fear or being frightened around certain people. So at different developmental ages, we see different signs, or we see different behaviors that come out with children.
I was also reading
even depression comes out at around,
they say for
around 12, they start being depressed. Mm-hmm. You may see this child kind of staying in their room a lot, or not doing homework, or having troubles at school with the teacher, talking back and not eating, or getting sick, vomiting. These are all behaviors that you may see due to that. And it doesn't mean they can't overcome it. It's just those are things that we're kind of seeing with those school agers,
Because I just learned recently that sometimes when you are a person that's a loner, that, like you just said, that's showing signs of some form of abuse, I just always thought, because I was the only kid at home, that I was just adapted to being alone. You know what I mean? But then with my daughter, she would always stay in her room and just read all the time. Mm-hmm. But it took for a mother figure that is a social worker to tell me that
there's some social avoidance. So they'll kind of avoid. Yep, yeah, it is. Social avoidance. So social avoidance is we're kind of, shying away or getting away from being social. Yeah. And sometimes you will have that social child that's not social anymore. That can be a red flag. Something's going on. She used to be social. She likes being around her peers, or she's always the life of the party. Now she's staying in her room. Now she's not answering her phone anymore. The teacher said who she was once an A student. Now her grades are starting to drop to a D. What's going on? Those are those conversations, or those are those parent teacher conference that need to take place. I need to know what's going on with her, or is there anything at home that's going on? You know, so that's what we start to see, that social avoidance. Some people just are embarrassed about the situation and they tend to not want to discuss it. They don't want to talk about it. I'm embarrassed. I don't want to talk about what's going on in my home. This is typical. Some people tend to stay in that pattern.
Now, I had an incident with one of my kids in school where he, of course, was diagnosed with ADHD, developmental delay from premature birth. Of course, he was on medication because he was always the hyper one. But it was an incident where they had called me and they told me, well, he said he was going to walk out the school. He was leaving. Then when I got there, he was standing upstairs like he said he was going to jump, like he was going through an episode. And it never dawned on me until like our conversation now, like those were the signs of being in that environment of abuse.
Yeah. And if you're seeing it all the time, you don't know what to do, or you don't know how to help your parent. So sometimes kids feel suicidal, that, maybe it's my fault. They might tend to blame themselves, that this is all happening, this abuse, when mommy is being jumped on, it's because of me. So they tend to internalize it and think it's them, and the best thing for us to do is to let kids know it's not your fault. While the parent is behaving this way, or it's not right, but it's not your fault either. Because, that's what tends to happen. You have kids that get depressed and they also will, even attempt suicide.
So what happens with those kids that once had a relationship with the partner that's now the abuser, and then that partner shies away and don't want to be a parent to those kids? What happened to those kids? I could just go off my experience, but as you being in the field and working, when you notice things like that, what's happening with those kids?
That's a slippery slope, because sometimes the abuser is taking it out on the parent and the parent only. They sometimes don't show that abuse to the child. Sometimes they're only abusing the spouse or the partner, and they will try to have the child pick a side or say, see,
so
your mother,
in their mind, in the abuser's mind,
she's doing this to me. They'll try to get the kid to feel, this is why you want to stay with me, because mom is mean. It's the opposite. It's all a manipulation game, and they also want to take the heat or attention off them, so they will do more blaming and say it's her fault. You see what she did, or she made me hit her, things like that. But we see it all the time working in child protective services, where there's custody battles, right? And then you have children that's in the middle of this fight, and you have to think about the best interest of the child. And me working in child protective services, you're always thinking about what's in the best interest of the child. Granted, this is the child's parent, but is the child safe around his parent? Do we have to have supervised visits? It's not saying that we're totally going to take the child away from the parent and not let them see them, but is the child safe around the parent? Do they need supervised visits? What's going on when the child is interacting with the dad? Is the child afraid? Sometimes it's good to look at the child's reaction and see, like, is the child afraid to be around dad? Or mom, or whoever the abuser is, because we do have women that abuse men. So I'm not going to talk strictly and say that men are always the abusers. Let's clear that up, because we have women too that abuse their spouse, that abuse men too. So we have to, assess the child. We always have to think in what's the best interest of the child and see how the child feels being around that,
because I've experienced, I do aqua fitness now. And like I say, I don't know if I'm like a magnitude for women that experience
They can
abuse.
feel it in
Yeah.
their spirit.
Because this lady just came up to me, and I just so happened to be on a different end of the pool, and we were just talking.
Okay.
And I was telling her about my nonprofit and all that stuff. And she was like, well, yeah. She say, my son, his wife is the abuser.
Is abusing him.
And he's going through custody battles now, trying to get his kids because she uses the kids against him.
Yeah.
And, we have it on record where, she's done XYZ. She's broke his car windows and did things to my house. And so it is very true that women abuse men.
And I'm sure he's still being a dad to the children. That has nothing to do with his relationship with the child. It's the mom that's using the child as a pawn here. So she's trying to keep the child away from dad, even though she's angry with dad. She's the abuser. She's trying to hurt dad by keeping the child away. So we see that too as well.
Yeah, Tanisha, it is really sad when the kids are used as a pawn.
Yeah,
and that happens a lot.
Yeah,
in these types of situation. And in the beginning, I had spoke about with my situation when I left my abuser and how I would still allow him time with his kids, but I had to call the police at one point to ask the police to step in and help me to get my kids because he didn't want to
take them away. Yeah,
he didn't want to give them to me because he wanted to still fight me. And I'm just like, why?
And they'll try to do things like that because they can't get close to you.
Yeah.
So it's a reaction. They become reactive. They are attention seeking, trying to get your attention because now you're away. You're out of the house. You're ignoring them. Yeah. Well, they can't have that control. Yeah. They can't punch anymore. They can't hit you. So what else can I do that can hurt her? So I'm going to keep the kids. I know I was supposed to drop them back off Sunday, but I'm not. I'm going to turn my phone off. So it's them seeking a reaction to get you upset any way that they can get you to, that's what they do. They use the kids.
And not knowing that you're doing this, you are traumatizing and
that's who's affected in the middle.
Mental illness with your children.
Yes.
By doing this type of behavior.
Yeah, it does. It causes trauma. They don't understand. They don't understand the screaming, the back and forth. You see a lot of movies, right? You watch movies and you always see kids like this, or they're in their room, when mom and dad are fighting and they're screaming, and, you'll see kids react like that.
Yeah.
That's them. They're trying to deal with the complex, emotions and, their cognitive. They don't have the cognitive ability real young to understand what's going on. All I know is daddy is loud. He's screaming and mommy is crying, and then you have those that try to turn into the helper, right? They try to save mom or rescue mom. They start to get distracted in school because they're wondering, is mom okay? So then it becomes a distraction. So all of that impacts children. And now they can't concentrate on school and their schoolwork because they're thinking about the fight and mommy was crying and screaming last night.
Or mommy's face
or mommy's face
is disfigured.
She doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
So, that it's kind of one thing that causes another. And then guess what? Well, she didn't eat her lunch today at school. Well, she feels like she don't want to eat because all of these things are going on at home. So we have to pay close attention when the child is not responding, or we notice a big significant change with the child. Also, the child that has this flat effect. And what I mean by this flat effect is they're not responding at all.
They're not. Yeah,
you can crack a joke, or they could be sitting here with their friends. All their friends are playing, and they're just sitting in a corner with a what we call a flat effect. Their face is just, they're not interested in anything around them. They don't want to play, right? We know play is children's work. So when a child doesn't want to play, we have to see what's going on, right? They're really attached to their parents, or sometimes the kid will get detached. They don't want to be around that parent because that's all I see you do is hit mommy or argue or scream or yell. So they will form what we call this reactive attachment, where they're not detaching. And we know kids attach to their parent. So when a kid is not attaching, then we have to understand that there's some type of neglect. Something is going on.
Wrong.
Something is going on.
And so Tanisha was stating that a lot of trauma is created by parents.
Oh, absolutely.
And that we don't believe that arguing in front of our kids affect them, which
it absolutely does, Tanisha. It does. Oh, wow. We see that. So I see it so much now,
I had a child that if I would yell at that child, they would start crying just by me yelling at them. So I had to learn a different way of talking to that child.
Who knows? That might have been a trigger. Maybe they've heard that before, or maybe they were in a domestic violence household. So you screaming, that's like that's a trigger. That's something mom used to do or dad used to do before I got taken away. It could have been a trigger. Or on the flip side, it can be something that they're not used to. If they're from a healthy, loving family where they rarely hear screaming, it's like, what's that? Like, she's screaming, so that might be something that's, not.
So I had to learn as a parent and getting into
disputes,
development, childcare.
Yeah.
And taking classes.
Yes.
And I had to learn a different approach with my children versus the approach that I've always seen as a kid growing up.
Yes.
And so when I started trying different ways of disciplining my kids, sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't.
Yes.
But I felt a lot better knowing that I handled my situation differently than how I'm gonna say most parents do.
Yeah.
Most parents, when you in trouble, they want to beat your butt.
Yeah.
But beating your butt is not a good gesture, because there are other ways of disciplining a child.
It is. And I talk to parents about that all the time. And being in pediatric, for 15 years, I worked on a peds floor and, teaching parents, how to respond to their kids, or, how using, yelling, and that can be frightening to kids, right? You want them to respond, but hitting them is also sending them a message that this is how I respond to others. My mom hits me, so now when I go to school, I need to hit my teacher. I need to hit my peers. So what you're doing is you're creating, by doing that, you're setting the child up, you're creating them, you're showing them how they should interact in the world. So we have to be careful with that. Even me as a mother of two, I have to think about with raising my children and how I respond, and thinking about back in the 70s, how I would do something and how my mother
was
responding to me. Now, older as a parent, just because that's my mother, that does not mean that was the healthiest way to respond. So now that I know, so when we know better, we do better, right? So I tend to even parent my children different. I have a conversation with them, we may have been popped in the mouth for something. We
sometimes I have to walk away and then
take a breather. That's still healthy. That's still healthy. So as long as we develop a healthy way of communicating, yours may not look like mine. Some parents might say, "Oh, I just had to go outside and just give me a cigarette, take a smoke." That's your way of dealing with it, or calming yourself down. We learn these coping and calming strategies, right? Stress balls, just the same thing. Like we squeeze stress balls when we stressed, or we close our eyes, we meditate, we do yoga. It's things that we know that we find these coping mechanisms that we do. It's the same thing with parenting. We have to come up with those too,
because it's nothing nice as an adult living with PTSD. So I could just imagine as a
Can you imagine a
child
child's experiencing
living
that? Yeah.
with PTSD, and you know,
And what about a 3-year-old that can't tell you I have PTSD?
Exactly,
because a 3-year-old can't communicate.
Can't communicate at all.
So it's even harder, you know, when they're younger and this is going on.
So it's like when I be around certain people, I like say if I'm dating or something like that, I have to tell them how to approach me.
Yes. Yes.
Because it might be a reaction.
Right. You know that.
You know what I mean?
You know how what's your trigger.
Yeah.
You know, and what things bother you or what makes you afraid, and you know what's going to make you have that kind of negative reaction.
Even with my kids, sometimes I have to tell them, like, when I feel like they pressing on me too much, I'm like, you know, you all got to back off. Give me a moment, back off. Yeah. You know, because it feels like you jumping on me versus then, you know, trying to talk to me or get your point across.
I have a 13-year-old. He's very articulate, and he'll tell me, what was wrong with you this morning? It's like you had an attitude, like you were talking. So he's articulate. He'll tell me, like, you know, the way you were responding to me this morning was just kind of mean. Your voice was. So he even notices like the pitch of my voice. He'll say, you know, did you have a bad night, or did you wake up with a bad dream or on the wrong side? You know, so he's even able to know, like, mommy, you wasn't yourself.
Yeah.
You know, this morning, you know, I've learned to apologize.
Of course.
Because that's what parents back in the day probably were doing. You do what I say. You do what I say. And that's it. Like, you gonna eat whatever I put on the table, you gonna eat it. If not, you're gonna go to bed home. So I don't do that. I don't force my kids to eat. And nowadays they got choices. You want lobster tail or you want ribeye steak? You know, we didn't get that.
We didn't get that. We had the rice and
get
them beans and you gotta eat it.
And if you don't want this living onions, too bad. Go to bed hungry. You know, so we parent different. You know, we parent different. And I've learned to apologize to my kids. I'm sorry. I had a bad day at work. You know, my supervisor didn't understand me on this topic and it made me feel some type of way. I'm sorry. I probably brought it home and took it out a little bit on you. So then I can explain to my son that that's what's healthy, because I'm telling you, you're acknowledging what you felt and how I talk. And now I'm telling you back that I'm sorry, you're right. So I'm actually acknowledging his feelings by telling him, you're right. Mommy was not feeling herself. You know, I was upset, you know, but I feel fine now. And thank you. You know, so we have to model too what a healthy, you know, relationship is like, and what parenting is like. And that's even for kids that get removed from the home. They can get removed from their abusive home and go to a foster care home, and the foster care mother is better.
No.
It happens. You know, it happens. So we have to make sure that we're even letting them know, the foster care parents, we're letting them know that, you know, this is what this child experienced. So we need you to be patient. We need you to talk calmly to the child. We need you to do this. So if you're going to do the same thing that the parent was doing, then you're not a good fit for this child, because we're trying to put this child in a healthy environment. And we want them to see, we want you to model and show them, you know, what a healthy environment looks like.
So Tanisha was saying again, she said, I remember when my children were younger, people didn't like how my children expressed themselves. And then she said, I'm so grateful that I didn't listen, because they're young adults with great communication skills.
That's right. Yeah.
And she said, I apologize to my children when they were younger too.
Yeah, that's where it starts, doing it when they're younger. You know, a lot of people want to sit down with their parents when they grown and they're adults and say, well, you know what, when I was a child, you did this. They grown now, right? They grown and over it. So Tanisha, that's best to apologize.
Which is how a child becomes an adult with suppressed trauma.
Yeah. I see that every day with someone now, who's holding on to some childhood trauma, and they're adult, they're grown. but they're having a hard time forming healthy relationships because what their mother did all the way back when they were 8. And they're grown and an adult right now, but they're still that I can still see the 8-year-old in that adult person.
So what happens when you're dealing with kids that you've apologized to for exposing them to certain situations, and you've apologized to them, but they don't let it go?
So that takes time. It's like healing.
But they won't even talk to you about, as far as, okay, well, what is it?
So all you have to do, you have to keep just modeling healthy, because kids actually go off action more so than words. So you can keep all day saying, it wasn't my fault and I tried. Less talking is probably best.
Yeah.
More action.
Yeah.
And sometimes just being in their presence and letting them feel for a minute. Sometimes we can overwhelm kids by too much talking, too much conversation, too much this, and let me explain this, and dad was this, and your dad was this, and your grandmother was this. Sometimes that's too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes just letting the kid be a kid when they're around you. So you take them to a perfect setting, a park or somewhere that makes them happy, and let them be a kid. Don't bring up and keep rehearsing. And sometimes they need to form a trusting relationship with you. And the only way someone can form that, in regards to kids, that they can form that trusting relationship is by, having that time with you and seeing, and they can see for themselves that this person is not so bad.
It's not so bad.
They're great.
Okay, well, this will conclude our discussion today about and prayer works as well.
Prayer always works. That's the foundation. That's good. That's, prayer does work. I even tell my son at night to pray, because there may be things that he's going through that he has not shared with mom or dad.
Yeah.
But I always tell him to give it to the Lord. Pray about whatever you're going through. It could be bullying. It can be anything. It could be about, stress. Peer pressure looks very different now with kids. A lot of kids go through peer pressure and don't go home and tell their parents, all this world of, no snitching and that. So sometimes they internalize and they hold on to a lot of things. So you're right. Prayer does work.
Yeah,
it does. So
I'm going to leave you all with this scripture. I'm going to bring Mallory back onto the show. Hopefully next week, maybe.
Sure.
Okay. Absolutely. And we're going to continue this discussion on. Hopefully we'll have an extra person to come on with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tanisha. Thank you. I'm going to leave this scripture, Jeremiah 30:17. But I will restore you to health in your wounds, declares the Lord. And if there's anyone that is experiencing domestic violence abuse, I have a nonprofit, which is called Live Dream Survivors, and you can reach out to us, which is 630-286-9514, and we will be happy to help you with anything that you are facing. And if you're not comfortable enough with contacting us, you can also contact the Domestic Violence Abuse Hotline, which is 1-800-799-7233. And you all have a good evening.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Dear God, in this moment, I reach for the light. When the path seems uncertain and hope feels out of sight, guide me through the darkness. Let your love be my guide. In the depths of my struggles, I know you're by my side. When the world fades away, I find myself wandering through memories, tracing the lines of who I used to be. In the quiet night, when the world fades away, I find myself wandering through memories, tracing the lines of who I used to be. A tapestry woven with dreams and scars, each thread a story, each color a part of the journey that shaped me, the battles I fought. In the mirror I see a reflection, a mosaic of moments, a collection of lessons. From laughter to tears, from joy to despair, every heartbeat whispers, you're still standing there. Who I am is a melody, a rhythm of my soul, a symphony of hopes, a tale yet to be told. I'm the echoes.